Finding a used condom wrapper wedged between my driver's seat and console wasn't exactly how I planned to start my Tuesday morning. I stared at the crumpled foil package, still holding my coffee mug. 42 years old, married 19 years, and I'm finding rubbers in my own SUV like some teenager's disappointed parent. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been the one checking tire pressure and cleaning out the console the night before. Danny! I called to my 17-year-old son, who was rushing around the kitchen grabbing Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Get over here. He jogged out to the garage, backpack slung over one shoulder. What's up, Dad? I held up the wrapper between two fingers like evidence in a courtroom. Care to explain this? His face went from curious to mortified to genuinely confused in about 3 seconds. Dude, that's not mine. I haven't even driven your car in like 2 weeks. Danny, you'd better not be feeding me a story or you're going to regret it. Dad, I swear on Mom's cooking, it's not mine. He paused, studying my face. Wait, you actually believe me, don't you? I did. Danny had inherited his mother's terrible poker face, and right now he looked as puzzled as I felt. Get to school, I said, pocketing the wrapper. That evening at dinner, I decided to test the waters. Marianne was cutting into her chicken, talking about some client who couldn't decide between sage green and forest green paint. By the way, I said casually, found something interesting in my car today. She looked up. Oh? Condom wrapper. Figured I'd have a talk with Danny about safe intimacy and respect for other people's property. The fork stopped halfway to her mouth. For just a split second, something flickered across her face. Panic, maybe guilt. Then she recovered with a forced laugh. He's a teenager, honey. Don't overreact. At least he's being safe, right? That's what I figured, until I asked him about it. Now she was definitely uncomfortable, shifting in her chair. What did he say? Said it wasn't his, and you know what? I believed him. Marianne set down her fork and reached for her wine glass. Well, maybe it was from before. Maybe it fell out of someone's pocket when they borrowed the car. When did anyone borrow my car? I don't know, Tom. I'm just saying there's probably a logical explanation. But there wasn't, and we both knew it. The only people who drove that SUV were Marianne, Danny, and me. Danny was out. I sure as hell hadn't been using condoms, which left my wife of 19 years, who was now staring at her plate like it held the secrets of the universe. I went back to eating, but my mind was racing. Over the past few months, Marianne had developed some interesting new habits, like getting her car serviced every 2 weeks at Murphy's Auto on Harbor Street, like working late on Thursdays when she used to be home by 5:30, like buying new underwear for the first time in 3 years. How's the car been running? I asked, keeping my voice light. Fine, great actually. Murphy's does excellent work. That's good. Seems like you've been going there a lot lately. She shrugged. They're thorough. Better to stay on top of maintenance than wait for something to break. After dinner, I helped clear the table and load the dishwasher, same as always. Marianne disappeared upstairs to take a bath, same as always. But nothing felt the same. I pulled out my laptop and did a little research on Murphy's Auto. Family-owned shop, been in business 12 years. The owner's name was Jack Murphy, Irish guy, divorced, late 30s. Looking at the shop's Facebook page, I could see photos of custom work they'd done. Jack was in several pictures, tall and lean with the kind of forearms you get from actual physical labor, the kind women seem to notice. Around 9:30, I decided to take a drive past Harbor Street. Just curious, I told myself. Just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Murphy's Auto was dark except for a single light in the office. I parked across the street under a broken street lamp and watched. After about 10 minutes, I saw movement behind the office window. 2 shadows, standing close together. One of them was definitely a woman. I sat there for another 20 minutes, engine off, windows cracked. At 10:15, the office light went out. A few minutes later, I heard car doors closing and engines starting. A dark sedan pulled out of the lot first, a Honda like the one Marianne drove. Then a pickup truck. I waited until both vehicles disappeared before starting my engine and heading home. Marianne was already in bed when I got there, reading a magazine. She looked up when I walked in. Where'd you go? Just drove around for a while, needed to clear my head. She nodded and went back to her magazine. I brushed my teeth, changed into pajamas, and slid into bed beside her. We said goodnight like we had thousands of times before, but I stared at the ceiling for hours listening to her breathe. By morning, I'd made a decision. If Marianne wanted to play games, I could learn the rules pretty quickly. I was looking at those wheel caps through the office window, and I was already smiling. The next day was Wednesday. I took a long lunch break and drove to Murphy's Auto with a story about needing a tire rotation. The place smelled like motor oil and had classic rock playing from a radio somewhere in the back. A guy in coveralls emerged from under the hood of a Camaro. "Help you?" "Jack Murphy." "That's me." He wiped his hands on a rag and extended one for a shake. "What can I do for you?" "Tom Fletcher, looking to get my tires rotated. Maybe an oil change." "Sure thing. What are you driving?" I pointed to my SUV through the front window. Jack nodded approvingly. "Nice ride. When's the last time you had the oil changed?" "My wife usually handles that kind of thing. She's been coming here for maintenance." Something subtle shifted in his expression. "What's your wife's name?" "Marianne Fletcher." Now I had his full attention. His grip on the rag tightened slightly. "Yeah, I know Marianne, great lady, real thorough about staying on top of maintenance." "So I've heard. She speaks very highly of your work here." We scheduled an appointment for Friday, and I left with Jack's business card. On the drive back to work, I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been studying my face just as carefully as I'd been studying his. That afternoon, I had lunch with Pete Kowalski, a foreman I'd worked with at the shipping yards for 8 years. Pete knew everyone in town and loved to gossip almost as much as he loved his wife's pierogies. "You hear anything interesting around town lately?" I asked, picking at my sandwich. Pete grinned. "Always." "What kind of interesting?" "I don't know. Just seems like there's always something going on. People mixing business with pleasure. You know how it is." "Ain't that the truth?" "Matter of fact, I heard something the other day about someone getting a little too friendly with their mechanic. But hell, that's probably just talk." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yeah, but you know how these things go. People talk, half of it's bullshit anyway." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Though I will say, if I was getting my car worked on twice a month, I'd want to make damn sure I was getting my money's worth." "Absolutely." After lunch, I stopped at the bank. Our joint checking account had about $8,000 in it. I withdrew $4,000 and opened a new account in just my name. Not stealing, just protecting my half of our assets. If Marianne was planning something stupid, I wanted to be ready. That evening, I did something I'd never done in 19 years of marriage. I went through Marianne's purse while she was in the shower. Most of what I found was typical: receipts from the grocery store, breath mints, lipstick, her wallet. But tucked behind her insurance card was a folded piece of paper with a phone number written on it. Not Jack Murphy's shop number, which I'd memorized. This was a cell phone. I memorized this number too, then put everything back exactly where I'd found it. On Thursday evening, I implemented step 1 of what I was starting to think of as my education program. I stopped at Murphy's Auto on my way home from work and asked Jack if he had a business card. He seemed surprised to see me, but handed one over. "Actually," I said, pulling out a pen, "thanks for the help with that tire pressure thing." I scribbled the words, "Thanks for the help," on the back of the card along with today's date. Sure, no problem." When I got home, I casually dropped the card into the kitchen junk drawer, where Marianne sorted mail and looked for stamps. Then I went upstairs to change clothes. I was in the bedroom putting on jeans when I heard the junk drawer open downstairs, then close, then open again. 5 minutes later, Marianne appeared in the doorway. "Tom?" "I found a business card in the kitchen, from Murphy's Auto." I looked up from tying my shoes. "Yeah? So?" "It has writing on it. Something about thanks for help." "Oh, right. I stopped by there today to ask about tire pressure. The guy was helpful." I finished with my shoes and stood up. "Why?" "No reason, just wondered." But her face said otherwise. She looked like someone who'd just found a snake in her garden and wasn't sure if it was poisonous. Friday morning, I kept my appointment at Murphy's Auto. Jack seemed more nervous this time, less friendly. He rotated my tires and changed my oil without much conversation. When I paid, I made sure to get a detailed receipt. "Everything look good?" I asked. "Yep, you're all set. Should be good for another 3 months." "Perfect. My wife will be happy to hear that. She worries about these things." Jack nodded but didn't meet my eyes. "Tell Marianne I said hello." "I'll do that." I folded the receipt carefully and put it in my wallet, right next to the condom wrapper I'd been carrying around all week. That weekend, I suggested we go out to dinner as a family. There was a diner on the other side of town that served decent food and attracted a mixed crowd: working folks, families, teenagers on dates. I'd done some research and learned that a woman named Carla Hendricks worked there as a waitress on Saturday nights. Carla used to date Jack Murphy until about 6 months ago. "I don't know," Marianne said when I brought up the idea. "That place is kind of far." "Come on, it'll be fun. When's the last time we went out as a family?" Danny was game. He'd go anywhere that served food he didn't have to cook himself. Eventually, Marianne agreed. We got a booth near the back, and sure enough, Carla was our waitress. She was a pretty woman in her early 30s with the kind of smile that suggested she'd heard every story and wasn't impressed by any of them. "What can I get you folks to drink?" she asked, distributing menus. While she was taking our orders, I noticed her eyes linger on Marianne for a moment longer than necessary. When she brought our sodas, she made conversation. "You folks from around here?" "Born and raised," I said. "Tom Fletcher. This is my wife Marianne and our son Danny." "Nice to meet you, I'm Carla." She set down Marianne's Coke. "You look familiar. Do I know you from somewhere?" Marianne shifted uncomfortably. "I don't think so." Maybe I've seen you around town. Do you get your car serviced anywhere local?" Now Marianne was definitely uncomfortable. Yes. Murphy's Auto on Harbor Street." "Oh, sure, I know Jack. Good mechanic." Carla's smile got a little sharper. "Though I hear he's been pretty busy lately. Lots of regular customers coming by for special attention." The silence at our table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Danny looked confused. Marianne looked like she wanted to crawl under the booth. "Well," Carla said brightly, "I'll give you folks a few minutes to look over the menu." After she walked away, Marianne excused herself to go to the bathroom. She was gone for 10 minutes. "Dad," Danny said quietly, "what was that about?" "Adult stuff, son, don't worry about it." On Sunday, I decided to escalate things. I drove to Pete's salvage yard on the outskirts of town and bought 4 rusted wheel caps for $20. They were dented and oxidized, the kind of things you'd find on a 30-year-old pickup truck that hadn't seen maintenance in a decade. That night, I waited until 2 in the morning, then drove to Murphy's Auto. Jack's custom Silverado was parked in the lot behind the shop, gleaming under the security lights. It had expensive chrome wheel caps that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. I worked quickly and quietly, switching his shiny caps for my rusty ones. The whole operation took less than 15 minutes. Then I drove home and slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, my phone rang at work. It was the main number for my company, but when I answered, the voice on the other end wasn't our receptionist. "Tom Fletcher?" "Speaking. This is Jack Murphy. We need to talk." "About what?" "I think you know." I leaned back in my desk chair and smiled. "Actually, I don't. But I've got a lunch break at 12:30 if you want to stop by." At 12:30 sharp, I walked out to the parking lot with a cup of coffee in my hand. Jack was waiting by my SUV, and he looked pissed. His Silverado was parked nearby, sporting its new rusty accessories. "You think this is funny?" he asked as I approached. "I think a lot of things are funny. You'll have to be more specific." "The wheel caps, tough guy." "What about them?" "They look about right for a truck that age." He stepped closer, and I could smell motor oil and cigarettes on his clothes. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Jack, I've been doing safety inspections for 12 years. I know when something's about to break before it breaks. And brother, you're about to break." "That's nothing compared to what I could take from you," he said, his voice rising. "I know the back seat of my SUV got some use recently." I know my wife's been spending a lot of quality time at your shop, and I know you're standing here instead of calling the cops, which tells me you're not exactly on solid ground here." His face went pale. For a moment, I thought he might take a swing at me. Instead, he shoved me hard in the chest. I'd been expecting it. I stepped to the side, letting him stumble forward and catch himself against the SUV. A few other guys from work had wandered over to see what was happening. I leaned in close and spoke quietly. "Hope the back seat was worth it, Jack." He straightened up, looking around at the small crowd that had gathered. His face was flushed, and there was sweat on his forehead despite the cool October air. "This isn't over," he said. "No," I agreed, "it's not." He walked back to his truck and drove away, rusty wheel caps catching the sunlight. That evening, Marianne tried to play peacemaker over dinner. "Tom, I was thinking maybe we should try to let go of any misunderstandings we might have had lately." "What misunderstandings?" "Well, you seem stressed, and I feel like there's been some tension between us." I set down my fork and looked at her. "You're right. There has been tension, and I think I know how to fix it." Her face brightened. "Really?" "Sure, just as soon as you let go of him." The brightness died. "Tom, I don't know what you—" "His name is Jack Murphy. He owns the auto shop on Harbor Street. He drives a Silverado with expensive wheel caps. Well, used to." Danny looked back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. "Should I go upstairs?" "Finish your dinner, son," I said. "Your mother and I are just having a conversation." But Marianne had already stood up from the table. "I can't do this right now." "When would be a good time?" I asked as she headed for the stairs. "Thursday afternoons? That seems to work well for you." My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it. Unknown number. "You're making this worse for yourself." I showed the screen to Marianne. "Friend of yours?" She read the message and went even paler. Then she turned and ran upstairs. That night, I lay in bed listening to Marianne cry in the bathroom. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to pretend none of this was happening, but a bigger part of me was already planning my next move. I'd been the nice guy for 19 years. Time to try something different. Over the next few days, I threw myself into what I started thinking of as intelligence gathering. I followed Marianne to work, to the grocery store, to lunch with her friends. I learned her new patterns, her new rhythms, and I started planting seeds. At the hardware store, I struck up a conversation with Bill Patterson, who owned the insurance agency next door to Marianne's design studio. "How's business?" I asked while we both waited in line to buy light bulbs. "Can't complain, though I'll tell you, some folks in town are taking bigger risks than they should." "How so?" "Mixing personal stuff with professional stuff. Always ends badly." I nodded sagely. "My dad used to say the same thing. Keep business and pleasure separate, or you'll lose both." Smart man. I just hope certain people figure that out before they lose more than they can afford. 2 days later, I had lunch at the cafe across from the design studio. I sat by the window and watched Marianne through her office window for an hour. She was on her phone a lot, and she looked stressed. At 3:30, I saw Jack's Silverado pull up outside. He'd gotten his wheel caps fixed, but I noticed he parked a block away instead of right in front of the building. Smart man. They met at a coffee shop on the far side of town. I followed at a distance and watched through the window as they had what looked like an intense conversation. Jack was gesturing with his hands. Marianne was shaking her head. After 20 minutes, she got up and walked out. He followed her to the parking lot, and they talked for another few minutes by her car. Then she drove away, and he drove in the opposite direction. I waited until they were both gone, then went into the coffee shop and ordered a latte from the teenage barista. "Busy afternoon?" I asked. "Pretty normal, though that couple that just left seemed to be having some drama." "Really?" "Yeah, the guy looked pissed, and the lady looked scared." I left a good tip and drove home, thinking about fear and how it changes people. That weekend, I decided to do some spring cleaning, in October. I went through every drawer, every closet, every box in our house. In the laundry room, hidden behind a stack of old towels, I found something interesting. A prepaid cell phone. It was a cheap flip phone, the kind you could buy at any convenience store. I powered it on and scrolled through the messages. Most were from a number I recognized, Jack's cell phone. The messages weren't graphic, but they were intimate. Lots of "miss you" and "can't wait to see you" and "he doesn't understand me like you do." The oldest message was from 3 months ago. The most recent was from yesterday. I took photos of every message with my own phone, then put the burner back exactly where I'd found it. Monday morning, I did something that probably crossed a line. I forwarded one of the text messages, just one, to Marianne's work email. Nothing explicit, just Jack writing, "Thursday can't come soon enough. You're all I think about." Then I sat back and waited. The call came at 11:15. "Tom, what did you do?" "Good morning, Marianne. How's your day going?" "You know what you did? The email." "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Tom, please, this isn't helping anyone." "I disagree. I think it's helping me understand the situation better." There was a long pause. Then, "Can we talk tonight?" "Really talk?" "Of course. We can talk about anything you want." But that evening, Marianne didn't come home until almost 10 o'clock. She looked exhausted and defeated. "Where were you?" I asked. "Driving around, thinking." "Come to any conclusions?" She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "Tom, I made a mistake, a big mistake, but it's over now." "Since when?" "Since today. I told Jack we can't see each other anymore." "Because I found out, or because you wanted it to end?" She was quiet for a long time. "Does it matter?" "To me? Yeah, it does. Because you found out." At least she was being honest. The next evening, I decided to test how over things really were. I suggested we go out to dinner, as a family, just like before. But this time, I had a specific restaurant in mind. "The Harbor Inn?" Marianne looked skeptical. "That place is expensive." "We can afford it. Besides, when's the last time we celebrated anything?" "What are we celebrating?" "New beginnings." The Harbor Inn was the nicest restaurant in town, the kind of place people went for anniversaries and business dinners. I'd made reservations for 3, but I'd also made some other calls. Marianne's parents lived an hour away, but they were always looking for excuses to visit. Her boss from the design studio was a social climber who never turned down dinner invitations, and Mrs. Chen from next door loved to gossip almost as much as she loved free meals. By the time we arrived at the restaurant, our table for 3 had become a table for 8. "Tom, what's going on?" Marianne whispered as her mother hugged her hello. "Just thought it would be nice to see everyone." Marianne's boss, a woman named Patricia, who wore too much jewelry and had opinions about everything, was already scanning the menu and complaining about wine prices. Her parents were asking Danny about school. Mrs. Chen was looking around the restaurant like she was memorizing details for later gossip sessions. We ordered appetizers and made small talk. I was the perfect host, attentive, charming, asking all the right questions. Marianne smiled and nodded and looked like she wanted to disappear. At 8:30, Jack Murphy walked into the restaurant with a blonde woman I didn't recognize. The hostess seated them 3 tables away from us, close enough that I could watch Marianne's face when she spotted them. The color drained from her cheeks. Jack saw us too. For a moment, our eyes met across the restaurant. He looked like a deer in headlights. "Marianne," Patricia was saying, "you look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," Marianne said, but her voice was shaky. "Are you sure? You look like you've seen a ghost." I followed Marianne's gaze to Jack's table. "Oh, I know that guy. He's a mechanic, right? Murphy's Auto?" Patricia squinted across the restaurant. "Oh yes, I've heard of him. Does good work from what I'm told." "Marianne goes there for service," I said helpfully. "Don't you, honey?" Marianne nodded but didn't trust herself to speak. "Really?" her mother asked. "I didn't know you were so interested in car maintenance." "She's very thorough about it," I said. "Very hands-on." Mrs. Chen leaned forward conspiratorially. "Is that the mechanic who's been having all that trouble lately?" "What trouble?" Patricia asked. "Oh, you know. People talk. Something about mixing business with pleasure, if you know what I mean." Marianne knocked over her water glass. Ice and water scattered across the table, and everyone jumped up to avoid getting soaked. In the chaos of cleaning up the mess, I noticed Jack trying to get his date to leave. They were gone by the time we got everything mopped up. Patricia made her excuses shortly after that, claiming an early morning meeting. Marianne's parents followed suit. They had a long drive ahead of them. Mrs. Chen stayed for dessert, but kept shooting meaningful looks at Marianne. By 9:30, it was just the three of us again. "Can we go home now?" Marianne asked. "Of course." In the car, Danny fell asleep in the back seat. Marianne stared out the passenger window without speaking. "Nice evening," I said. "You planned that?" "Planned what?" "All of it. Getting everyone there. Making sure we saw Jack." "I invited some people to dinner. I can't control who else shows up at restaurants." The next morning, I woke up to find Marianne already gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and there was no note. I made coffee and checked my email while Danny got ready for school. At 10:30, my phone rang. Marianne. "Tom, I'm at my sister's house in Portland. I need some time to think." "How much time?" "I don't know. A few days, maybe a week." "What should I tell Danny?" "Tell him I'm helping Karen with something. I'll call him tonight." She hung up before I could say anything else. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, drinking coffee and thinking. Then I called in sick to work and went through Marianne's home office, really went through it, methodically and carefully. I found bank statements, credit card bills, appointment calendars, business correspondence. Most of it was routine, but there were some interesting details, like the fact that she'd been billing several clients for hours she'd never worked, and that she'd been listing personal expenses as business deductions on her taxes, and that she'd been telling clients their projects were delayed due to supply issues when really she'd just been too distracted to do the work. I made copies of everything and put the originals back where I'd found them. Then I made a phone call to Patricia, Marianne's boss. "Hi, Patricia. It's Tom Fletcher. I was wondering if I could take you to lunch later this week. There are some things about Marianne's work situation that I think you should know." We met on Friday at a quiet cafe downtown. Patricia was the kind of woman who loved drama, as long as it didn't involve her directly. "I'm worried about Marianne," I said over salad. "I think she might be having some personal problems that are affecting her work." "What kind of problems?" "Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but I've noticed some irregularities in her billing practices, and some clients have mentioned delays that don't seem to have legitimate explanations." Patricia's eyes lit up with interest. "What kind of irregularities?" I showed her copies of the billing records I'd found. Patricia studied them carefully, her expression growing more serious. "Tom, this is fraud." "I was afraid you'd say that." "I need to review her files immediately." "I understand. I just thought you should know before this becomes a bigger problem." Patricia nodded grimly. "I'll handle this discreetly, but Tom, if these irregularities are confirmed, I'll have to terminate her employment." "I understand. Just try to be fair about it." But fairness wasn't really what I was after anymore. Meanwhile, Danny had overheard a phone conversation between Marianne and me, where she was trying to convince me to pretend for a while so she could save face in town. When she hung up, I found him in the kitchen. "Dad, are you really going to pretend everything's okay?" I laughed. Not a pleasant sound. "Danny, face is the first thing your mother lost when she started screwing around with Jack Murphy." That weekend, Marianne came home. She looked tired and defeated, like someone who'd been fighting a war she couldn't win. Monday morning, Patricia called Marianne into the office for a performance review. By noon, Marianne was unemployed. She came home around 1 o'clock, her face red from crying. "They fired me," she said. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. You did this. You went to Patricia. I was concerned about some billing irregularities I noticed. You went through my files." "I went through our files. This is our house, remember?" That afternoon, I got a text from Jack's phone number. "This has to stop." I texted back, "I agree, it does." An hour later, he called. "I want to meet," he said. "Just the two of us." "When?" "Tonight, my shop, after closing." "I'll be there." I arrived at Murphy's Auto at 7:30. Jack was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his Silverado. He'd put his expensive wheel caps back on, and they gleamed under the security lights. "You wanted to talk," I said. "Yeah, this thing between us needs to end." "I agree. Marianne told me you two are trying to work things out." "Did she? So it's over." Between her and me, it's over. Since when? Since last week, since you started your little campaign. I walked closer, stopping about 10 feet away. Jack, can I ask you something? What? Did you ever think about what you were doing? Not just the intimacy, but what it would do to a family? His face hardened. That's not on me. She made her choice. You're right, she did, but so did you. Look, I'm not proud of it, okay? But it happened, and now it's over. See, that's where I think you're wrong. What do you mean? I think you're still in contact with her. I think you're still meeting her. And I think you're both hoping this all blows over so you can go back to screwing around behind my back. That's not... Last night, Jack, the Riverside Motel, room 237. The color drained from his face. How did you... I followed her when she left the house at 8 o'clock, told me she was going to the store. Funny kind of store. Jack looked like he might be sick. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stay away from my wife, completely. No phone calls, no texts, no accidental meetings at coffee shops, nothing. Or what? Or I start telling people in this town exactly what kind of special services you provide at this shop. Jack turned and started walking toward the shop entrance. I followed. Where are you going? Inside. This conversation is over. Actually, it's not. As Jack unlocked the shop door, I noticed there were still 3 customers sitting in the waiting area, visible through the front windows. I'd forgotten Murphy's stayed open until 8 on weeknights for people who worked late. I raised my voice slightly. Jack, make sure you tell these folks about your discount program. The customers looked up from their magazines. Jack froze with his key in the lock. You know, I continued, loud enough for everyone to hear, the one where loyal female customers get special personal attention. One of the customers, a man in a business suit, stood up and walked toward us. Excuse me, what discount program? Jack's face was bright red. There's no discount program. Really? I said. That's not what I heard. I heard you give very thorough service to certain customers. Very hands-on. The businessman looked confused. The other 2 customers were paying attention now, too. Sir, the businessman said to Jack, I've been bringing my car here for 2 years. If there's a discount program, I'd like to know about it. There's no discount program, Jack said again, but his voice was shaky. Are you sure? I asked. Because my wife seems to think there is. She's been coming here twice a month for special service. Now all 3 customers were standing, looking back and forth between Jack and me like they were watching a tennis match. What kind of special service? The businessman asked. Jack looked trapped. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Has there? I stepped closer to him. Because from what I can tell, you've been servicing my wife pretty thoroughly. Very personal attention. The businessman's expression changed as he started to understand what I was implying. Oh, I see. One of the other customers, a woman in her 50s, gasped audibly. Jack finally snapped. He lunged at me, swinging wildly. I'd been expecting it. I stepped to the side and let him stumble past me, his momentum carrying him into a stack of tires. He went down hard, tires scattering everywhere. The customers backed away, one of them pulling out a cell phone. I stood over Jack as he tried to get up. I told you to stay away from her. You bastard, he wheezed, struggling to his feet. Maybe, but at least I'm an honest bastard. Jack charged again, and this time I didn't move. I let him grab the front of my shirt and shove me backward. Then I smiled. Feel better? He let go and stepped back, breathing hard. Around us, the shop felt like a stage set after the final curtain. The customers were whispering among themselves. The woman with the cell phone was still recording. You want to know what I think, Jack? I said, brushing off my shirt. I think you're a small man who got a kick out of screwing another man's wife. I think you liked the sneaking around and the lying and the feeling that you were getting away with something. Shut up. But you know what you forgot? This is a small town. People talk, and now they're going to have plenty to talk about. While Jack was picking himself up off the floor, I quietly pocketed his chrome wheel caps from his truck outside. He was too rattled to notice. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Jack? If I were you, I'd find a new line of work. I don't think you're going to have many customers left after tonight. I left him standing there among the scattered tires with 3 witnesses and a woman still holding up her phone. The drive home took 15 minutes. When I pulled into the driveway, Marianne was waiting on the front porch. "Where were you?" she asked as I got out of the car. "Having a conversation with Jack." Her face went pale. "Tom, what did you do?" "I made sure he understands the situation." "What situation?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out Jack's chrome wheel caps, the expensive ones I'd taken from his truck while he was picking himself up off the shop floor. "The situation where you choose." I set the wheel caps on the hood of her car, where they caught the porch light and gleamed like jewelry. "Choose what? Whether you want to be married to me, or whether you want to keep playing games with him." Marianne stared at the wheel caps, then at me. "I already chose. I told you it's over." "Is it? Because you were at the Riverside Motel last night." She closed her eyes. "Tom, room 237, 8:30 to 11:15. When she opened her eyes, there were tears in them. "How long have you known?" "I've known everything, Marianne, from the beginning." "Then why didn't you just confront me?" "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to see if you'd keep lying even after you knew I knew." And you did, right up until tonight." I picked up the wheel caps and walked toward the front door. Marianne followed. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you decide what kind of person you want to be." I set the wheel caps on the kitchen counter and turned to face her. "Those are his, aren't they?" she said. "They were. Now they're a reminder." "Of what?" "Of what it costs to lie to someone who loves you." Marianne reached out and touched one of the chrome caps with her fingertip. "Tom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are. Can you forgive me?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd married, still the mother of my son. But she was also someone who had betrayed our family, our trust, our life together. Someone who had lied to my face for months. "I don't know," I said. "Ask me in a year." She nodded and wiped her eyes. "What about us? What about our marriage?" "I don't know that either." "Do you want me to leave? Do you want to stay?" "Yes, if you'll let me." I picked up the wheel caps and handed them to her. She took them, confused. "What am I supposed to do with these?" "Whatever you want. Keep them as a reminder. Throw them away. Give them back to him. Your choice." "Tom, I don't understand. For 19 years you made choices about our marriage without talking to me. You chose to lie, to cheat, to risk everything we built together. Now you get to choose what comes next." I walked toward the stairs, then stopped and looked back. "But understand something, Marianne. I'm not the same man I was 3 weeks ago. That man trusted everyone and questioned nothing. This man asks questions and verifies answers. This man protects himself." "I understand." "Do you? Because if you stay, it's going to be different. I'm going to be different. I can live with different." "We'll see." I went upstairs and took a shower, and when I came out, the wheel caps were gone. I never asked her what she did with them. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee. While it was brewing, I went outside to get the newspaper and found something unexpected on my windshield. A note written in Jack Murphy's handwriting. "I'm leaving town. I'm sorry for everything." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. When Marianne came downstairs for breakfast, I didn't mention it. 3 days later, I was cleaning out the garage when I found something I'd forgotten about. The condom wrapper that had started everything. It was still in the pocket of the jacket I'd been wearing that Tuesday morning 6 weeks ago. I held it up to the light, this small piece of foil that had unraveled 19 years of marriage and revealed truths I hadn't wanted to know. Then I threw it in the trash, along with the rest of the lies. Outside, it was getting dark, and I could see lights coming on in houses across the neighborhood. Normal families having normal evenings, dealing with normal problems. But I wasn't normal anymore, and that was okay. I was something else now, something harder and smarter and more careful. Something Jack Murphy and Marianne Fletcher had taught me to be. I walked into the house, made myself a sandwich, and sat down at the kitchen table where Marianne used to sit. The chrome wheel caps were long gone, but I could still remember how they'd looked that night, gleaming and expensive and meaningless. Tomorrow, I'd go to work and inspect safety equipment and make sure things were built to last. Tomorrow night, I'd come home to a house that was quiet but honest. And maybe, if I was lucky, Carla from the diner would stop by for coffee. After all, everyone deserves a fresh start.